You could spend years trying to impress a woman with stories about your success, your money, your travels. You could shower her with compliments, gifts, and good intentions. And yet, none of it would matter. Because what makes a woman fall in love is not what you tell her about yourself. It's what you draw out of her about herself. Attraction isn't built in the answers you give. It's built in the questions you ask. Questions that make her feel something she hasn't felt in years. Questions that pierce through the masks she wears with everyone else. Most men don't understand this, which is why they get forgotten. But the man who knows how to ask the right questions, he lingers in her mind long after the date is over. Tonight, I'm going to show you how to do it. Brother, listen closely. This isn't another video about cheesy pickup lines or manipulative games. This is about presence, curiosity, the kind of masculine awareness that cuts deeper than any compliment. Women meet dozens of men who talk endlessly about themselves, but the rarest man is the one who asks a question that makes her pause, breathe, and reveal something real. That's the moment she feels a spark, not because of how flashy you are, but because of how much of herself she feels around you. Think about the philosophers. Socrates built entire dialogues not by boasting of knowledge, but by asking questions that forced others to look within. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. Women don't fall in love with the man who shows off. They fall for the man who makes them look within. And that's what I'm going to teach you in this video. The 5 types of questions that make a woman not just interested, but invested. Number 1. Questions that pierce the surface. Here's the raw truth. Most men never get past the surface. They meet a woman and immediately start with the usual. So, what do you do for work? Or, what kind of music do you like? Do you know how many times she's answered that? Hundreds, thousands, and every single time it's the same conversation, the same forgettable script. That's why she doesn't remember those men. They didn't touch her. They didn't wake anything up inside her. They just reminded her that most men are replaceable. But the man who asks questions that cut through the surface, he becomes unforgettable. Why? Because human beings are starving to be seen, to be understood beyond the labels and the routines. When you ask a woman something that makes her stop and actually think, you create an emotional break in her pattern. Her nervous system lights up. She feels curiosity, a spark, not because of your looks, not because of your bank account, but because you gave her a rare gift, presence. Take Tom, 34. Tom was your typical safe guy. He always asked women about their jobs, their favourite shows, or their weekend plans. He thought he was being polite, normal, but his dates never went anywhere. One night, I told him to change one thing. Instead of asking about her job, ask, when was the last time you felt truly alive? That night, he did it, and the woman across from him froze. She looked at him like no man had ever spoken to her before. Why? Because for the first time, someone wasn't asking about her resume. He was asking about her soul. This is where psychology kicks in. Attraction isn't built on logic. Women don't think themselves into love. They feel themselves into love. By asking a question that digs beneath her mask, you bypass her defenses and speak to her core. She remembers how you made her feel in that moment. And that feeling, not the dinner, not the wine, not the compliment, is what ties her to you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig." When you ask deep questions, you're helping her dig. you're guiding her to connect with herself, and she associates that awakening with you. That's powerful. So here's the shift, brother. Stop being the guy who asks what everyone else asks. Stop being polite and predictable. Become the man who cuts through the surface and goes straight to the core. Next time you're with a woman, look her in the eyes and ask, what's a dream you've never told anyone because you're afraid they won't take it seriously? Watch what happens. Her guard drops, the air changes, and suddenly, you're not just another man she met. You're the man who made her feel. Number 2, questions that unlock storytelling. Here's something most men never realize. Women don't bond through facts. They bond through stories. Logic makes sense, but stories make you feel. And feelings, not facts, are what decide attraction. You can tell a woman everything about your achievements, your job, your values, but if she never feels anything while you're talking, you've lost her. But when you draw out her story, you pull her into an emotional state, and she starts to associate those emotions with you. This is where men get it backward. They think telling their story will make her fall in love. And yes, your story matters, but not yet. First, you need to awaken hers. When she tells you a story, she's not just sharing information, she's reliving emotions. Her brain is firing as if she's right back in that moment. The excitement, the fear, the pain, the triumph. And here's the secret. Those emotions don't exist in a vacuum. She'll connect them to the man who's listening. That man becomes part of her memory. Let me give you an example. Paul, 41, divorced, successful but frustrated with dating. He'd sit across from women and talk endlessly about his travels, his career, his hobbies. The conversations were polite, even enjoyable, but they went nowhere. I told him, stop performing. Start unlocking. On his next date, instead of bragging about himself, he asked her, what's the hardest decision you've ever made, and how did it change you? She paused, looked at him differently, and then told a story about walking away from a toxic job, the fear of starting over, and the strength she discovered in the process. For the next hour, she couldn't stop talking, and Paul didn't need to impress her once. He just listened, and she fell deeper into the connection. The psychology behind this is simple. When someone tells a story, they step out of the present and into a lived experience. By asking questions that pull her into storytelling, you're creating an emotional bond without forcing it. You're guiding her into reliving intensity, and she begins to crave that intensity with you. Seneca once said, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. When you ask about her battles, her triumphs, her hardest moments, you're not just collecting information, you're reminding her of her own strength. And the man who helps her see her strength is the man she wants to keep around. Not because you flattered her, but because you awakened her. So here's the shift. Stop asking surface questions that only skim her life. Ask the questions that force her into a story. Instead of, where did you grow up? Ask, what was the moment growing up that shaped you the most? Instead of, how's work? Ask, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken and what did it teach you? These aren't gimmicks, they're keys, and the man who knows how to use them becomes unforgettable. Number 3, questions that reveal values. Here's the truth most men ignore. Attraction without shared values is a ticking time bomb. You can have chemistry, passion, even love, but if your values don't align, the foundation will crack. And deep down, women know this. That's why, even when she's laughing with you, even when she's enjoying your presence, she's also watching, testing, trying to feel out what you actually stand for. Most men fail this test because they never bring it up. They hide their standards, dodge their principles, and play safe just to keep the vibe light. They're terrified of asking something that might scare her away. But here's the paradox. What scares her away isn't your standards. It's the lack of them. A man with no values is a man with no spine. And no woman respects a man she can bend at will. Take Daniel, 39. On dates, he always kept things playful, easy, and agreeable. He thought, if I'm fun, if I don't rock the boat, she'll like me. And sure, women laughed, enjoyed the moment, but then disappeared. Why? Because he gave them no gravity. He was a balloon, floating, light, but easily let go. I told him to flip the script. Next time, instead of playing it safe, ask her, what's a principle you could never compromise on? He did, and what happened shocked him. She leaned in. She opened up about honesty, loyalty, and how betrayal had shaped her. Suddenly, it wasn't banter anymore. It was depth, and for the first time, she saw him not as entertainment, but as a man worth respecting. Psychology explains it like this. Women aren't just seeking fun, they're seeking alignment. At a primal level, values are survival. They reveal how you'll handle conflict, stress, family, life itself. When she shares her values, she's revealing her compass. And when you reveal yours, she feels your spine. That combination is rare and unforgettable. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." In other words, decide who you are before you invite anyone into your world. If you don't know your values, you'll bend to hers. But if you do, she either rises to meet you or falls away. Both outcomes are power. So here's your shift. Stop fearing that asking about values will kill the vibe. It won't. It will separate the shallow from the serious. Instead of asking, what's your favourite movie? Try, what do you respect most in people, and what instantly makes you lose respect? That one question reveals more about her than 100 shallow dates ever could, and the man who isn't afraid to ask it. That's the man she respects. That's the man she remembers. Number 4, questions that awaken desire for growth. Here's a truth most men overlook. Women don't just want a man who accepts them as they are. They want a man who awakens who they could be. Comfort feels nice, but it doesn't create passion. Growth does. When a woman feels like you see her potential, when she senses that you expect more from her than the world does, something primal kicks in. She feels both challenged and inspired, and that combination is intoxicating. Most men do the opposite. They try to win a woman's approval by making her comfortable, by never asking anything that might stretch her. They say things like, "You're perfect just the way you are." It sounds sweet, it sounds safe, but deep down it rings hollow, because she knows she's not perfect. She knows she has untapped dreams, unrealized strengths, and battles she hasn't yet fought. And the man who pushes her toward that growth, instead of settling for comfort, is the man she can't forget. Take Marcus, 36. Every date, he would shower women with validation. "You're amazing, you're gorgeous, you're perfect." And sure, they smiled. But after a while, they drifted. Why? Because he wasn't awakening anything, he was coddling. Then, one night, instead of pouring out empty praise, he asked a woman, "What's one thing you've always wanted to master, but never started?" She froze. Then she admitted she had always dreamed of painting, but was too scared of failing. That conversation didn't just entertain her, it ignited her. Weeks later, she texted him, showing him her first canvas, and she told him straight up, "No one ever asked me that before." The psychology here is undeniable. Human beings crave growth. We're wired for challenge. When you ask a question that points toward her evolution, she subconsciously associates you with that growth. You become not just a man she's dating, but a force in her life, the one who makes her better. And people don't walk away from the forces that shape them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one brother," that applies here too. Don't just talk about growth, embody it. When you live as a man on a mission, your questions naturally pull others into that same orbit. She'll feel it. She'll crave it. So here's your shift. Stop flattering. Start awakening. Instead of, "What do you like to do for fun?" ask, "If nothing could stop you, what skill would you dedicate your life to?" Instead of, "What's your favorite restaurant?" ask, "What's the one place you've always wanted to see before you die, and why?" These aren't small talk. They're growth talk. And when you become the man who talks like that, you're no longer the guy she forgets after dinner. You're the man who expands her. And expansion, brother, is the root of lasting desire. Number 5, questions that expose vulnerability. Here's the brutal truth. Most men think women fall in love with their strengths, their money, their status, their achievements. But what actually builds intimacy is vulnerability, not weakness. Vulnerability. The willingness to expose the scar, to show the lesson behind the pain, to reveal the human beneath the mask. And if you want a woman to open to you, you must first invite her into that same space. Most men never go there. They stick to the safe ground, compliments, humour, small talk. Why? Because they're terrified of seeing what's underneath. They fear that if they touch her wounds, the mood will break. But here's the paradox. The mood doesn't break. It deepens. Because when she reveals her vulnerability and you hold it with strength, you become someone rare, someone safe in the truest sense. Dean, 45, is a perfect example. He was successful, confident, and polished. Women liked him, but no one stuck. His conversation stayed light and playful. Then, one night, I told him, "Stop being charming. Start being real." He asked his date, "What's a mistake that ended up teaching you the most?" She went silent. Then she told him about a failed engagement, the shame, the lessons, and how it reshaped her standards. And in that moment, Dean stopped being a fun date. He became the man she trusted with her truth. That night changed everything for him. Psychology backs this up. When two people share vulnerability, their brains release oxytocin, the bonding chemical. This is the same neurochemical released between a mother and her newborn. That's why sharing scars creates intimacy that no compliment can compete with. Vulnerability says, "I'm human. You're human. And we can be human together." Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Your scars aren't proof of weakness. They're proof of survival. And when you invite her to share hers, you're not asking for pity. You're asking for truth. Truth is the soil where intimacy grows. So here's your shift, brother. Stop trying to be perfect. Stop pretending your job is to entertain. Instead, create the space where she can drop her guard. Instead of asking, "How's your week been?" ask, "What's the hardest thing you've had to overcome, and how did it shape you?" Then shut your mouth. Let her speak. Hold her story with presence, without judgment. And in that silence, you'll feel it. The walls falling, the bond forming. That's the moment she doesn't just like you. She begins to need you. Number 6, questions that envision the future. Here's something you need to understand. Attraction, built only in the present moment, is fragile. It burns bright, but it burns out. The deepest connections are formed when a woman starts to unconsciously picture her future with you in it. And the most powerful way to trigger that isn't by promising her the world. It's by asking questions that make her dream out loud. Most men never even touch this territory. They're too focused on the now. Where to go, what to eat, what show to binge. They're trapped in small talk, and they never give her mind permission to wander beyond the moment. But a man who asks her about her future doesn't just create conversation. He creates vision. And once she begins to imagine her life beyond today, and you're standing across from her as she does, you're already there in her future with her. Let me tell you about Eric, 38. He was charming, successful, but all his relationships fizzled after a few weeks. He couldn't figure out why. Then, one night, instead of asking the usual questions, he looked at his date and said, "If nothing could stop you, what kind of life would you build for yourself?" She lit up. She described a home by the ocean, a creative career she'd been too afraid to chase, and the kind of family she longed for. Eric told me later, "I didn't say much that night. I just watched her dream." And guess what? Weeks later, she told him, "I don't know why, but I can see a future with you." That's not magic, that's psychology. Here's why it works. Our brains can't always distinguish between imagining and experiencing. When she dreams out loud, she emotionally experiences it. And since you're the man holding space for that vision, her brain ties those feelings to you. You become the anchor for her hope. And hope, brother, is stronger than lust. Marcus Aurelius said, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions." And it's true. A man without a future is already dead. The same goes for relationships. If you want a woman to invest in you, help her envision a future worth chasing. That doesn't mean promising to give it to her. It means asking the questions that make her paint the picture herself, with you standing in the frame. So, here's your shift. Stop getting stuck in the present. Start opening doors to tomorrow. Instead of asking, "So, what do you like to do on weekends?" Ask, "If you could design your perfect life 10 years from now, what would it look like?" Instead of asking, "What's your favorite vacation spot?" Ask, "What's the one place in the world you feel you have to see before you die?" Those questions don't just fill silence. They build vision, and vision builds bond. Number 7. Questions that turn back to you. Here's the paradox most men don't see. The questions you ask her aren't just about her, they reveal you. A weak man asks questions to perform interest, like a salesman checking off boxes. A strong man asks questions that expose his own depth, because every question is a mirror. The kind of curiosity you bring into the room tells her exactly what kind of man you are. Most men stop at listening. They nod, they smile, they let her talk. And while that's better than talking only about yourself, it's incomplete. Why? Because connection isn't a one-way street. If she opens her heart and you never open yours, she feels like she's speaking into a void. She may respect your interest, but she won't feel intimacy. Real intimacy is built when you step into the arena with her, not just as her audience, but as her equal. Take Adrian, 42. For years, he thought being a great listener was enough. Women loved that he paid attention, but they always told him something was missing. One night, after a woman shared her story about the hardest choice of her life, he finally dropped his guard. He told her about the time he walked away from a business deal that could have made him millions, because it violated his principles. He admitted the fear, the sleepless nights, and the doubts. And that night, something shifted. She leaned in closer. She told him, "I've never felt like someone understood me so deeply." What changed? He stopped hiding behind the role of the good listener and revealed his own scars, his own values. He became human. Psychology is simple here. Reciprocity. Vulnerability creates intimacy only when it's mutual. If you expect her to open up while you remain untouchable, she feels exposed, even unsafe. But when you match her openness with your own, you both step into the same fire. And that fire bonds you. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Vulnerability feels like that, like you're risking judgment. But the man who risks judgment becomes unforgettable, because he's rare. Most men hide behind masks forever. So here's your shift. Don't just ask powerful questions. Be ready to answer them yourself. When you ask her, "What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?" be ready to tell her about yours. When you ask her, "What mistake taught you the most?" reveal your own scar. That's not weakness. That's strength. Because the man who can expose his truth without flinching shows a woman he doesn't need to hide. And that, brother, is the man she falls for. Brother, understand this. Questions are not tricks. They are not lines. They are mirrors of the man you are. Most men chase love by talking, bragging, showing off, and in the process, they become noise. But the man who asks with presence, who listens with stillness, who guides a woman into her own depths, he becomes unforgettable. This isn't about memorizing clever prompts. It's about becoming the kind of man who can sit in silence and make that silence feel safe. The kind of man who can hold a woman's dream in one hand and her fear in the other without flinching. That's not seduction. That's mastery. And mastery isn't something you fake. It's something you cultivate. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one a good man doesn't ask questions to manipulate. He asks because he's genuinely curious, because he sees beyond the surface, because he knows that love is not about possession, it's about presence. A woman falls for that, not because you tricked her, but because you awakened her. And in awakening her, you reveal yourself. So let me leave you with this. Stop trying to be the man who impresses with answers. Become the man who transforms with questions. Stop trying to be remembered for your image. Be remembered for your depth. If this spoke to you, if you felt that shift inside, then I want you to do two things. First, comment below with this phrase: presence over performance, because that's the principle that separates men who get forgotten from men who are unforgettable. Second, subscribe, not because you need more tips to chase women, but because you're ready to master yourself. This channel is for men who refuse to live shallow, who choose to live with discipline, presence, and power. So remember, don't just be a man she meets, be the man she remembers. And that begins with the questions you dare to ask.